Raluca Ragab. I'm a managing director with Eurazeo Growth. Our fund supports companies that are in the scale-up phase. And scale-up phase is really truly beyond the broader market fit. It is when companies really start to professionalize their operations and really deliver growth at scale. And we're talking multi-million-dollar revenues at this point in time. The types of companies we invest span the entire Europe. So we are a truly pan-European fund. And they also span multiple verticals of interest. We are large investors in application software businesses, also in data infrastructure and developer tools. We have a lot of investments in fintech and in marketplaces. The Greek tech ecosystem has really diversified over the past few years, and we now see opportunities across the entire range of verticals that are of interest to us. Just starting from the more domestic place, such as marketplaces or consumer internet, we have a lot of businesses there, such as Instacar, such as Ferry Hopper. We then move on to more how you pay for these businesses, for these purchases, fintech businesses, a lot of payments businesses, but also we have really interesting players like Natech, which is really addressing much more core banking systems in fintech. And then you have the various layers of application software. We have various players in the HR tech space, such as Brick. We actually have a very interesting player, Connectly, that really improves the conversion of revenue for merchants. We have players like Ariadne, which would actually be looking at the flow of people through a merchant, through its surface area, so call it an IKEA or another supermarket that would want to know where people are moving through so that they can optimize how they place products so that they can increase revenue. So again, these are very interesting revenue increasing tools that we see in Greece, which simply didn't exist a few years ago. So we see a quite wide range of application software, very exciting, and who are getting scale. So who are moving again from the few hundreds of thousands of ARR to a few millions of revenue and ARR. If you look at this past year, in Greece, investments in seed, Series A, B, and C rounds in total were about 400 million euros. To put it in perspective, this was just a few transactions a few years ago, and it would have been tens of millions of euros. If I were to compare it to maybe other ecosystems that we know and that we've looked at, Spain, for instance, was at that level in 2018. So Greece is now where Spain was in 2018. Spain now is at 1.1 billion euros. So if we look forward, we probably think that in about 5 years, Greece should also be somewhere in the 1 billion range, easily. There's a very important factor here, which is that the Greek ecosystem also benefits from a lot of experience that has been developed abroad and that has returned to Greece and has brought that kind of knowledge, know-how, and also the entrepreneurial spirit to actually set up new companies. As opposed to many other countries, what I've seen there is a really good mix of people who have been born and raised in Greece and who stayed in Greece and they developed their businesses in Greece. And then people who have been abroad either have worked at large businesses. I've met founders who are ex-Google founders or ex-Facebook founders, people who came from all over Europe or from the United States and who returned. But we've also met founders who went all the way to other ecosystems, who operated in Brazil, for instance, such as one of the founders there, and who all returned. And now they're sharing the knowledge and they're creating actually a very interesting mix of homegrown businesses, but that are really benefiting from that entire knowledge transfer from abroad. And I think that's pretty unique. It's obviously a small country where you've had a lot of talent that has been abroad, and it's managed to recapture it back. And that's the ecosystem is kind of accelerated now. I think usually the main three drivers that I've seen in other countries work are, one, there's the regulatory framework. Second is the STEM education. And third is the role models. So if I were to talk about each of them in turn, I think the regulatory framework is really about the ease of setting up a business, the ease of hiring people, but also the ease of letting people go, because you need to be dynamically adjusting. An enterprise that is a startup will not have a very clear, straight path. It will sometimes accelerate and sometimes it will have to cut back. And having a framework that allows them to do that, for them to be able to really hire a lot of people, but then to actually adjust when they need to, is very important. And even to close, ultimately, we should make closing businesses a very easy thing, because we need to then have the same entrepreneurs possibly try a second time and a third time. And in most ecosystems, you have really great examples of people who have been trying multiple times until they really hit the home run. Around other European tech hubs is that they have evolved from zero around universities. universities that started to invest a lot more in STEM degrees. And thus, you would have actually generations of students who would graduate. And of course, a lot of them would take the classic path of ending up in the R&D department of a large corporate. But some of them would think of starting businesses. So I would say Germany is actually a very good example where they've increased both the availability of STEM degrees with a lot of focus on AI and computer science, of course, but also the fact that they are given in English. That also meant that they can have students from abroad access those degrees and then stay in Germany thereafter. So you have Nuremberg and Munich, who have really become strong centers of entrepreneurship. I think the third and most important probably element is the role models that they have. At the end of the day, in a lot of the earlier ecosystems, you have societies who have valued taking few risks in your career, where the parents tell you to take one of the prescribed jobs of becoming a lawyer or a doctor because they are safe. What we need is to have entrepreneurs that go through a cycle of setting up businesses. Some fail, some are successful. And the successful ones are able to actually speak to the younger generation and tell them what is a reasonable path to success via a completely different, much more risky, let's say, path that you choose out of university. And I think that the more we have these role models, the more they speak, the more we invite them to events, the more we actually create the stories around them and create the awareness and visibility around them, the more you're going to have other kids who graduate and decide that this is also for them and this is exciting. And they take that path and they actually, some of them become big success stories. So we're working on that. We're doing a lot of events in Greece to actually showcase the success stories. I just hope that it stays on course and that it continues to keep the real good talent in the country, because it's of course very tempting to go to much larger markets, to go and set up a business in Germany or in the US, and that in parallel it develops a sufficient capital pools that are supporting these entrepreneurs early enough so that they don't have to feel that they have to go abroad for their funding needs. And thus it keeps it there. It creates a sense of community. It creates a sense of purpose. And it creates also a sense of fulfillment that they are raising, in a way, growing this ecosystem together.